This video is brought to you by Cook Unity. Stick around to hear more about the special offer they're providing to the entire Upper Echelon community. Alright, it's been a while since I posted, and here's why. About 2 weeks ago, I published a video. That video was based on a social experiment I had attempted to run which used exclusively AI-generated content, audio, visual, text, etc., in order to create a false identity for the sake of dispersing information as a sort of shock and awe style proof, if you will, about the imminent danger of human beings losing control of reality. That may sound hyperbolic, I get it, so let me explain. We are on the precipice right now of being unable to trust anything we ever see online. Now, for some, that's already the case. Discerning and skeptical viewers may already adhere to a more rigid set of principles about seeing versus believing, but the reality is such that even now, our ability to see something and have any degree of confidence whatsoever in its authenticity based on merely looking at it is crumbling. There are, of course, a few different ways for the moment to go about checking what is and is not true, though that will likely be outpaced because the ability to manufacture fake content will always outpace the ability to check what is real if the ability to fake things comes first, which it has, but that's a whole different rabbit hole to go down. That's probably what my job is about to become exclusively, as the world is all out consumed by the reckless pursuit of LLM, large language model prediction methods, but for the topic today, it's a bit more focused, having merely originated from that social experiment, not so much adhered to it as a core guiding principle. Here's a quick summary for the people that never watched the first video, though I would advise doing so for context if anyone is interested in the subject matter, generally speaking. My experiment revolved around crafting a false identity with AI, but also crafting false metrics with botted social media accounts to create the appearance of authority. This went okay at first, but I rapidly began to see that the accounts I was purchasing were 100% artificially botted by what I now refer to as a directed bot network. That realization was fairly important because after becoming aware, I decided to track the network, sending me down a rabbit hole of teamwork, Twitter info scraping, modularity algorithms, and extensive research into the inner workings of Twitter botnet traffic, with what I personally believe are fascinating discoveries. The initial method of analysis was rather primitive, I do have to admit that. After buying a botted social media account and naming it Cynthia Talbot, or SynthBot for short, I created a research burner account which I used to follow all of the accounts that had been artificially directed at Cynthia Talbot in order to inflate her follower count. This worked in a very simplistic way, by allowing me to backtrack through the list of other followed accounts, thereby starting to create my own list of where this directed bot network had been individually pointed. For clarity, since the topic of online bot traffic is so wildly complex, a directed bot network refers to a large number of synchronized and totally artificial accounts, not real people, that are spun up, directed to a target, and told, all of them, to follow it. I started by analyzing more of the accounts where this bot network had been deliberately sent, but I started to realize that this was probably one of the least intuitive ways to gather any information, and I needed to step it up. Enter Shino. Shino is one of my Discord administrators and a long-time affiliate of the channel who showed me a process where accounts can be scraped and analyzed through the use of Twitter's API, after which they can be fed into a program called Gephi to analyze results and visually graph the composition of the botnet. Interactions, connections, overlapping data points, you name it. The process was actually very interesting and involved a couple different methods. On the one hand, we were gathering info with direct usage of Twitter's new API tools, having paid for them under the Upper Echelon business license. On the other hand, we also found that we could copy the authorization header value from a request to the version 1.1 API, which didn't have Elon's new artificially imposed rate limits. That might have a few serious security implications down the line, I'm not sure. But also, side note, Elon Musk has now made it exponentially more difficult and expensive to research anything like this, which is kind of super annoying. That public key let us scrape followers, feed them into the modularity algorithm, and start mapping the bot network as well as secondary communities or industries that it touches. This is a game changer, it really is, and led us down a rabbit hole that seems to have now touched 4 separate industries: Indian politics, American politics, adult content, and crypto, which are overrun with either directed bot traffic or integrated bot traffic, also referred to here forward as echo chamber bot traffic. All in all, what we've found appears to be a nearly 10-year, widespread, democratically aligned blue wave propaganda network that was used in 2016, 2020, and is being spun back up right now for 2024 to once again flood social media, in this particular case Twitter, with enormous amounts of pro-democratic talking points, anti-opposition memes, and bolster the metrics of major DNC officials like Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, also their spouses, as well as John Cooper, Hillary Clinton, and more. I know, that's a really big claim to make, but here we are. Hey, if you want to win, you gotta fuel like a winner. Shout out to everyone who got the reference. Today's video sponsor is a little bit different, but that's a good thing, in my opinion. The brand is Cook Unity, providing a new take on meal service with a chef-to-consumer type model that puts freshly prepared meals right on your doorstep every single week. Meals come fully cooked with dozens and dozens of options, including vegan, paleo, and gluten-free for those that are interested in that sort of thing, alongside an emphasis on flavor diversity, inventiveness especially, and convenience. Most recently, I myself had the ginger scallion chicken and sesame noodles made by chefs Yong Zhao and Wanting Zhao in Brooklyn, New York. Another example would be hanger steak with cheesy corn on the cob, which was especially good. I love corn on the cob and I love cheese, from Chef Ruben Garcia, also in New York. And just to showcase the sheer number of options available, because saying it doesn't really do the company justice, this is their website, where you select meals every single week and choose from an incredible array of dishes prepared by hand every day in regional micro kitchens, not warehouses or commercialized production facilities. Personally, the value I get from these is by having them specifically for lunch. Breakfast with family, dinner with family, of course, but in the middle of the day where I'm working on video topics and engrossed in research for different things, I need something fast, good, and easy. That's where Cook Unity comes in, allowing me to stay focused on work while also having delicious things to eat. And it is tremendously valuable for me in my current career field. You can choose your favorite meals, pause, skip, or cancel at any point in time, and as a special offer to the Upper Echelon community, you can get 50% off your first order of Cook Unity meals by going to the link down below in the description with code UpperEchelon50 at checkout. Again, link down below and 50% off your first order with code UpperEchelon50. Big thank you to Cook Unity for sponsoring the channel. Before discussing in full detail, I'd like to go over the general methodology used. At first, I was merely using my own arbitrary set of criteria to detect bot engagement, which clearly worked, but was fairly primitive, obviously. For this project, though, thanks to Shino, I was able to explore resources from the Indiana Observatory on Social Media, who has done extensive work cataloging, identifying, and defining social media bot activity with analytical tools for how to discover, organize, and evaluate the material. Social Bot Practicum for Computational Social Scientists, detection of novel social bots by ensembles of specialized classifiers, feature engineering for social bot detection, even the DARPA Twitter Bot Challenge are all very valuable resources to understand, among many others, but for the sake of simplicity, we decided to work with a combination of their tools and the methods I had already been using, successfully I might add, which led us to a pair of accounts. Before fully exploring, however, we need a clear-cut explanation of how all of this works. This right here is the visualized graph of Cynthia Talbot. The small white dots, not connected to one another in the slightest, are obviously pretty much all bots, directed to follow the account by whatever person or entity is in command of the centralized network. This is a directed bot network that has targeted hundreds that we know of, more likely tens of thousands, of individual profiles and artificially inflated their follower count. Pretty straightforward, kind of a one-dimensional botnet. However, this right here is the graph produced by analyzing a different account named Z Promoter. We didn't even go that far down this particular rabbit hole either, but the point is these bot networks have wildly different operational patterns. Some are directed, some are meshed together into a tightly packed ball where everyone knows everyone. Others have been targeted by multiple separate bot networks, as can be visually seen when they're graphed out, etc., etc. But the point is that social media bots are not as simple as many people believe. Keeping that in mind, we started really digging. Connected to our patient zero, if you will, Cynthia Talbot, who had been fully botted by a directed network, there were two additional accounts of note. One was called Marketer Tamzid, and the other Simba Golden 1. These accounts returned dramatically different network graphs, and Simba Golden 1 in particular is where we struck gold. This graph right here, the one constructed after analyzing Simba Golden 1 with the modularity algorithm and graphing it out in Gephi, this meshed amalgamation of colors here, was a brand new section of the network that had been fully integrated with Democratic-leaning politicians. It's actually kind of hard to condense everything that we found in a single video, but I'll try. Mapped by the modularity algorithm, different colors represent different communities, and as time went on, identifying and analyzing these communities with a replicatable method turned into a multi-stage research project. As discussed earlier, there were 4 separate communities primarily identified through a series of connections that had become infested. And when I say infested, I mean absolutely infested and overrun with botted traffic and followers, including American politics, Indian politics, which I didn't really analyze, but that's an interesting one, adult content, obviously, specifically Asian adult content, and crypto. For the adult content portion of the botnet, we stayed pretty far away from that one. Those accounts were, for the most part, baited phishing hooks. That's the best way to describe them. These accounts have been thoroughly botted from top to bottom with fake followers, posted a collection of non-original pornographic content from around the web, and contained altered URLs in their description that had been shortened to obfuscate their destination, their real destination. They use like bit.ly or whatever the URL shorteners are, some of which contained malware. That section is likely the most immediately dangerous area of the botnet, but for today's video, it's a place we mostly stayed away from. The area we ultimately ended up focusing our efforts was here. In order to consistently evaluate the accounts shown on this particular graph, we employed a variety of different tactics. Number one, evaluate the profile. What's the bio? What's the tweet activity look like? When is the tweet activity happening? And what was their first ever content posted? After that, we looked for significant gaps in their behavior, any indications of the account having changed hands or been compromised, checked Social Blade, and also plugged the profile into the Indiana University identification tools. What we found was that the vast majority of these accounts are classified as echo chamber bots with 70 to 90% confidence by the Indiana Observatory, as well as nearly every single account analyzed tripping our own personal criteria, such as retweet spam to mask impossibly low engagement. When I say impossibly low, by the way, I mean impossibly low. 5, maybe 10 likes per original post with 50 to 100,000 supposed followers, all gained in the past couple of years. Similar retweeting patterns, tens of thousands of followed accounts, and suspicious gaps in activity. They're really tripping all of the different criteria to be categorized as bots. In fact, there were a multitude of tie-ins to what seemed to be very clear additional sections of bot network activity, but we did have to realistically limit the scope of where we looked owing to the sheer size and scale of the problem. Regardless, what we found was that there is a tremendous bot network that has now been spun up twice and is gearing up again. Many accounts already contain the Blue Wave 2024 hashtags, it's all over, and bio descriptions similar to the past 2 cycles. It's being spun up again for the 2024 election. To be clear, if anyone were to be somehow uncertain about the accuracy of these results, here's a direct side-by-side comparison. The orange and red are integrated bots with between 70% and 91% confidence that focus on political, adult, or crypto themes, bolstering an entire community of false activity. And the blue examples are real people that I personally know on Twitter and can say with certainty are real people. Big Fry, a YouTuber, Kira TV, Callum Upton, Josh Strife Hayes, Nicholas Diorio, even Aria Realty, the most brain-dead person I've ever met in my life and a supporter of Earth 2 of all things, comes back as clearly human. Not to be relied on exclusively, these bot prediction tools are useful, but the size and scale of these networks, combined with a current push by Elon Musk to apparently lock down and paywall as much of the platform as possible, make it difficult, expensive, and time-consuming to analyze. Perhaps one of the most straightforward examples I can show here is an account named Big Blue Wave USA, which is a central target of bot network traffic, and when I say central, I mean it's very central to the bot network traffic, alongside former Democratic administration official John Cooper. Big Blue Wave USA, as obvious as it is, right on the nose, also has 5 identical backup accounts ready to spin up at any point in time, and aggressively, constantly pushes DNC propaganda. Now, in the interest of being unbiased here, viewers might say, well, it's not propaganda because it's true, and all Republicans are evil, which is a perfectly fine opinion to hold. But on the flip side, John Cooper, another central figure propped up by this enormous integrated bot network, has routinely put out false information, made up facts, and polluted the value of Twitter discourse with fake news that is then propelled to a massive audience through the largest bot network I've ever seen. The pattern is extremely obvious. Disinterested or possibly apolitical individual accounts all at once, either in the lead up to 2016, 2020, or even now, make a sharp pivot and begin posting exclusively retweets, only DNC favored political content, and amplifying a select set of high-ranking DNC officials and Democratic politicians, all at the exact same time. While doing so, they trip almost every single echo chamber bot warning imaginable from third-party sources and evaluation tools, as well as the criteria we developed ourselves, creating an enormous spiderweb of interconnected but largely inauthentic accounts that are likely managed by real people somewhere up the line, but operate more as propaganda foot soldiers in a public relations campaign than actual humans. Here's the thing though. I can't claim with any degree of absolute certainty that this bot network, as far as it goes, has measurably impacted our presidential elections. But what I can do is draw a few connections. In the aftermath of 2020, despite winning the presidency, the Democratic political machine was left picking up the pieces in the wake of a, go figure, blue wave that never crested. There's a big blue wave coming that will wipe away the Republicans, posted by The Hill on July 12th of 2020. These kinds of titles were abundant and certain right up until the very moment that they were completely wrong. What happened to the big blue wave? Where did it go? Theories on why this mirage might have been differ dramatically, but I would like to posit that a massive bot network of falsified social media traffic contributed, at least in part, to a sort of grassroots blue wave atmosphere on social media by design, which ultimately caught the party by surprise in some capacity when the movement failed to materialize with as much tenacity and zeal as the bots were able to manufacture. I can't necessarily prove that, and even if it were to be true, it would be far from the only causal factor in play, but the reality is that tens of thousands of highly sculpted and artificially propped up political Twitter accounts with hundreds of thousands of followers between, I'm sorry, millions of followers between them, some of them with hundreds of thousands individually, are integrated into the democratic political community of social media, very integrated, at the highest possible level, with a clear and intentional design that uses them every couple of years to push mass levels of propaganda and DNC talking points as far as possible on the platform. Now, this just needs to be said. I am extremely confident that there will be a Republican version of this bot network somewhere out there on social media. Maybe Twitter, maybe Facebook, I don't know. I haven't yet seen it, but I find it impossible to believe that just the Democratic propaganda machine uses this technique, in a world where social media is one of the central pillars behind American politics. It seems obvious to me that both sides engage in this type of behavior somewhere down the line. I just happened to tap into this particular part of the network first because that's where my entry point was closest to. I'll keep searching. We very likely will find the GOP version of this and be able to analyze it, but for right now, what you see is what you get. It's important for us to remember not all of these people are bots. Some of them, very few of them, but some of them are just human NPCs who regurgitate whatever political messaging they see and agree with. But the probability here is that a significant portion of specifically blue wave political accounts are manufactured. And yes, only 37% of my own audience these days even reside in America, but all of us that do reside here should be aware that the social media landscape is dominated by bot networks that are remarkably good at passing for human already, or, well, on the surface they are, and will only improve with time, making it more essential than ever to be aware of what is and is not real as the chaos builds up over the next year and a half. I should add here, there is a lot more information that I could possibly cram into the video, but as an editorial choice, it seems less relevant than the core message. We found bots with broken scripts, we found keyword tags and common themes in profile descriptions, we found extensive evidence that while there certainly are some real people in the blue wave echo chambers, the community is driven by an engine of bots that camouflage themselves and amplify messages from exclusively party officials. Legitimate users roped into the network seem to be, this is really insulting and pejorative, but they seem to be the lowest common denominator of human individual who does nothing but parrot whatever they see all the time. And again, this is just one tiny sample of the bot network that drives what I have now begun to suspect is the majority of all Twitter traffic, interaction, and usage. Now, for anyone doubting the authenticity or likelihood of these propaganda networks existing, I'd like to reference work done by Bellingcat in 2019. Writer Benjamin Strick, while analyzing an independence group out of Indonesia, uncovered a propaganda network related to the West Papuan Freedom Movement. This propaganda network expanded from Twitter to Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram with very specific hashtags and was uncovered with similar tools. Another example, in 2022, outlined by the European Digital Media Observatory, a pro-Russian Twitter botnet was uncovered, which spread propaganda with regards to the war in Ukraine, once again determined with similar tools and methodology. This network was primarily focused on European Union countries as well as the UK and Switzerland. The campaign's architect was never identified, but suffice to say the existence of bot-driven social media propaganda networks isn't new or even uncommon. Funnily enough, Twitter knows who the bots are. During the experiments that we ran to gather all of this data, I got rate limited twice on two separate accounts. I was repeatedly forced to do authenticity verifications or the CAPTCHA stuff or the bot things, right, to make sure that I'm human. And it was very clear that Twitter is able to identify who is real and who isn't with far greater accuracy than they ever acknowledged or used for actual moderation. I can't say why that is, I have no idea, or what their specific thought process might have been, but I can tell you that the bot network I originally discovered through a social experiment is far larger than anything I previously expected, with much more profound implications. Crypto is completely overrun with botted accounts that are spun up periodically to shill exit scams and rug pulls. Indian politics has something going on with large amounts of bot traffic. We didn't really analyze that though. Portions of the adult content network are custom built to distribute phishing links and malware, but the most interesting one by far is the Phantom Blue Wave political propaganda network that is spinning back up right now as we speak, blatantly inflating metrics for specific DNC politicians while pushing the narrative that everyone hates the evil Republicans all at once, and a grassroots movement is about to sweep across the nation in a way it never has before, and yet they're consistently wrong. It's funny to me that pollsters and predictive analysts were so categorically incorrect in 2016 and in 2020, but here we go again. Are they wrong because of things like this? Are they wrong because of sheer incompetence? I don't know. But when media is left holding the bag and wondering how on earth did we get it all so bad, it requires the question, were they wrong because of an advanced echo chamber integrated botnet that they desperately wanted to believe and did? Or is it something else? Honestly, I'm not sure, and I'm certainly not done with the topic yet, but that's today's video. For everyone out there supporting the DNC in this coming presidential race, just be aware that a lot of what you are seeing and are about to see, especially on social media, is fake. It comes from a dedicated bot network supporting the president, the vice president, and a few additional figureheads, both former and current, with enormous amounts of manufactured interest. That's it. If you want to support, please check out the links down below. Merch, social media, the video sponsor, of course, as well as a few more items. In particular, locals and Patreon for a monthly subscription that makes it possible to do more projects like this, because these are, of course, resource intensive and money intensive. There's a whole team of people that worked on this with me, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. If you want to support, again, links down below. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.